What's up, pod pals? It is your buddy Adam, and you are listening to Podcasting Business School, the show where I teach podcasters how to love their show like a hobby and build it like a business. This is a very special podcast audit episode. I've got my friend Nancy here, my pod pal Nancy from the Eldercare Success Podcast. Nancy, how are you doing today?
I am just rocking it, doing awesome. Thanks.
Well, we were discussing beforehand, we're both going to be down at PodFest hanging out and enjoying that. So I can't wait to meet you in person. But today, it's all about auditing your show, trying to brainstorm a few tips and ideas. So I like to paint a picture to kind of steer the initial point of our conversation here. So 6 months from today, like let's say we're sitting down 6 months from now and we're having a great conversation about all the awesome things that have happened. Everything's gone perfectly with your show, with your business. What kind of progress, like what would that look like for you?
Oh, dear. Okay. So it would look like having at least, I'd say, 3 corporate relationships that I'm dealing with and different ways to monetize. I'm looking at doing it a little bit more creatively than just ad slots. And that's what I did with my first podcast. I think I'd mentioned that I had gotten a sponsor right out the door even before my first show. So I tend to try and do things a little unconventionally.
I'm all about that. Okay, so let's dig into some of these monetization ideas that you've got, because it sounds like we've got some interesting things to unpack. So go ahead and lay it on me. What do you got cooking?
So I am looking at doing a private label type of podcast. It may not be 100% private label, but for a private channel for a corporation where they could actually also monetize it as well within their own network of vendors, employees, advisors that are part of the institution that they have. And I'm kind of holding. I'm curious about that because I think it'll be beneficial to them because it's not just an outright cost and expense, but I'm also trying to figure out. And I haven't presented it to them yet. I've got a conversation with them in the next week or so. But I've teased the idea, started to tease it up. But I want to look at ways that they can monetize it, not just me. And if there's a way for them to cover their costs that I'm going to give them so that they can exceed those costs and it now becomes a revenue component for them, I also want to share in that revenue platform.
Right.
So that's one idea that I'm thinking about.
Okay.
And
Okay.
it's a little different.
No, I mean, but this, I believe, is a direction that podcasting is going. I recently chatted with my friend Meredith, that is a podcast host for hire. So that is a thing where
Mhm.
large companies are now hiring somebody that is the face and the voice of their show. My friend Tom Singer, your situation made me think of him because he is the paid host of the NSA, the National Speakers Association podcast. So a giant association hired him to be the voice, and all he has to do is just show up and do the show, and he gets paid, and then he's out of there. So he's not doing production, editing, social media, anything.
Yeah, I don't want to do any of that.
He's
Yeah,
the paid talent. So I feel like we can use those as examples for this. I know what you're wanting to do is a little bit different than that, but I feel like these are like building blocks. Like, hey, this is a thing that's happening. And I think if they had, especially if this company has some sort of membership or some sort of yearly fee or something, like this is a value add where if you
right.
have a branded show that serves their members, their people, their core audience, or if they could use it to recruit business, if it's co-branded enough that your ideal listeners are their ideal customers, then I feel like that's very attractive. Do you feel like any of those things are true for this situation?
Absolutely. I see it's actually sort of a symbiotic relationship where their advisor customers, so it's one off removed, um, could benefit because that's where the customers come in. It's through a um, without revealing who they are, they're people who are selling their products and services. So they're the end, then there's the middleman, and then there's the customer that ultimately gets it. And there's 2 channels. One is direct to the large corporate client, and then the other is direct to a consumer type of person. And I see it can go two ways really, where there's a private channel that they can tap into, because I'm thinking it doesn't have to be out there for everybody, because it doesn't need to be a huge audience. It just needs to be directed towards a particular clientele that they want to have a tighter relationship with. And especially in the market that I'm dealing with the elder care. I just recorded a show with a listener of mine the other day, and she says, there's information out there, yet there's not that sympathetic ear, and there are not a lot of people talking about it privately. So it becomes a real pain point. And how do you make that a little softer and gentler so that the customer of theirs feels that they have an outlet to go to, or just an outlet to sort of get some ideas, excuse me, get some ideas that can help them through that process of caring for an aging parent, which is emotionally, physically, and financially difficult.
Right.
And just find some answers and a little bit more peace to make that process for them easier. It'll be easier for their parents if it's easier for them,
Right.
hopefully.
Well, I think your idea is a winner. Like, I would wholeheartedly endorse you to approach these people. And I think the real key is to map out all of mainly the opportunity for them, but also explaining what is in it for you, so that there's like those expectations are set up front. But I think really mapping out the different angles of approach that we've talked about already, where it's like, okay, this is a brand builder. This is a community builder. This is a real relationship building opportunity between you and your ideal people that you want to serve by, having this direct communication channel. Like when I'm pitching the idea of podcasting to people that are what I call podcrastinating, they're thinking about it. I,
Love
I,
it.
I go with a podcast, you have the opportunity to be the literal and actual voice of reason in their earbuds as often as you want to.
It's very personal.
Yes. And it's your voice, it's direct communication, and you become a part of their life routine, which is a superpower of podcasting that doesn't exist anywhere else. Nobody, like when people listen to my show, it's like, oh, the new episode comes out on Tuesday. I listen to it when I work out in the morning on Tuesday, or when I drive my kids to school on Wednesday, or while I'm cooking dinner on Tuesday night, or whatever. I'm a part of the routine. And people don't watch YouTube content like that. They don't look at my emails like that. They don't look at my Instagram like that. So it's a superpower. So I would definitely mention that. And then of course, tie in like, hey, there are potential sponsorship opportunities. There are other brand collaborations that we could all, get a piece of that pie. And I would just really focus on also the evergreen nature of it, because that's huge too. The information's always there, always bingeable.
I have two questions, because there are two stumbling blocks, and I always like to know the answer to no in case they say no or start the hesitation, right? And then at least, I'm not trying to do a hard sell, because I'm always figuring out what's in it for them. Ultimately, the customer, if we're thinking about what's in it for us, we're lost. It's not going to work. But in this particular case, there's something that isn't it for me, for sure. And I wanna still retain the ownership rights of my content. I don't wanna sell it out 100%. That's part and parcel of it, because I've got my own brand, and it would be in co-brand, I think, which will help them, so it doesn't look so corporate. And in talking to some of the folks that are selling, I'll call it the trinkets and trash stuff, the branded swag, there's more of a trend to not put a corporate brand name on something. It's more of a feel and a feeling and a sentiment, which is fine, but you still have to know, like, what are you buying, and who do you go to ABC store or not for it?
Right.
So there's that. How do I retain ownership? Do I keep my copyright? Ideally, I'd like to, because it can be leveraged in different ways. The other is, because I'm dealing with a multi-billion-dollar corporation, I know that, in my past corporate background, is that legal's probably going to be all over this, and I'm dreading the general counsel's office.
Yeah. So I think there's a way to soften this a little bit. Maybe you've
Fire
already
the
done this.
attorneys.
Yeah, fire them all. have you had any contact whatsoever with anybody from this corporation at all so
Oh
far?
yeah, the fellow that I'm talking to is a gentleman who'd been a client of mine in the past in a different business in the board space, and he loves the idea that I was just sort of batting around, sort of brainstorming with the other day, and we were catching up. He says, "Oh my god, this is amazing. We have to talk on this, and I can do this, this, and this." And but he's in a department that's not a marketing department, which is fine, and it's a non-revenue generating department. And this, I think, talking about revenue could actually put him on the map personally from an industry perspective and doing something a little differently and create some notice and value for it's not going to be a huge revenue and we're not talking about billions of dollars, but it could be in a pretty impressive branding aspect. It's making also sure that the marketing department doesn't co-opt it from him as well.
Yeah. Well, I think that if there's an opportunity at all to collaborate ahead of time with somebody that would be a key decision maker or an important
Yeah,
person that would
I'm
have
talking to him
sway,
next week. Yeah.
like that, like whether they could come on your show or you do some sort of Instagram live together or you do something like that's my main way that I get in with people with my podcast, with my Instagram live. I'm like, hey, let's connect, let's create content together and have an experience where you can see and hear me and we can talk back and forth. And like that is, I've created so many business relationships out of that where I just leverage, hey, I've got a podcast. You have a thing to say. Would you mind coming on and speaking on that thing on my show? Let's have some time together.
Yeah,
So,
we actually talked about that, and he doesn't feel qualified, which is fine just because of what the nature of his particular position, and he's a direct report to the CEO, so this is a pretty big position. I'm not necessarily worried about it. But I also want to make him look good and help build him out.
right.
And the access, the type of content that's out there that can be produced is just, I mean, it's an ocean wide,
Yeah. Yeah.
ocean wide and ocean deep type of content for this.
Yeah.
So it's just I'm excited about it. It's
Yeah.
hopefully
I would be
hopefully
too.
they'll be forward thinkers and agree to the rest of them. I'm not worried about him. I'm worried about the sort of the rest of the
Yeah.
institution that might say you can't do that because it's illegal. It's like
Yeah.
yeah, it's blatant.
Laws.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, I think definitely dip your toe in that water. Let's see what happens and just kind of keep the framework of ELF, easy, lucrative, fun on top of that. Like, we don't want this to turn into some like million-hour a week experience that you hate when you're going from like a podcasting situation that you love doing. So, and I would definitely retain your brand and your branding and
Yeah.
all of that because it's something you've worked hard to build and you've got
Right?
a good thing going. And that, yeah, I wouldn't give that up because that's I mean when you have a podcast it's yours, like that content is yours
Well, and
and
it's your name and reputation that's out
yes.
there, even if you're the voice of, the talking head of somebody else. The other question I have for you is you mentioned doing sort of Instagram videos
Mhm.
or vlogs or whatnot. And I actually prefer doing just the voice because I think it's more personal. And like you said, if you're in somebody's ear, yeah, YouTube and the others get a lot of visibility. But I think there's something that's very personal about audio only.
Yeah.
And I'd love your perspective on that. I mean, I can do video, but it's just not as interesting.
Yeah, well, okay, for me, like one of the choices people will make in the entrepreneurship space, the online entrepreneurship space is like YouTube channel or podcast. And for me, I'm very sensitive to the time it's going to take in relation to the output that I'm going to get business
Yeah.
wise and relationship building wise. So, like you, I'm a big fan of flip on the mic. We got a recording. Let's just go. This is easy. That being said, like I'm using an app called StreamYard right now, and it's going live into a YouTube channel. But I put zero effort into the YouTube channel. Like I don't even remember how to log into it, to be honest. Like it's there. I've got a bunch of videos up. Some of them have some views, some of them don't. So I have a YouTube presence, but podcasting and the audio is like the tip of the spear, and that is my brand. That is I'm just big on focusing on that one big thing, and then the next layer of that I'm always thinking about how can I interact with more of my listeners in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I'm asking a lot of questions, trying to get some feedback, trying to get some, and like I said, the last show that I just recorded, which will go and air sometime next week or next month, is a listener
Good,
called me and sent me a direct message and said, "I have to just share this with you,"
good.
and it was very, very personal. So it's going to be quite a special show.
Yeah, and just looking at opportunities like what we're doing now, or like just if you feel like your people are showing up on one particular social media platform, which is something I challenge all my clients to do, especially I'm like, hey, where are they at? I don't need you to be on every platform. I don't want you to be on every platform. Where are your people at? Let's figure that out. Let's get an
Yeah,
idea and let's spend most of our marketing time on that platform. So for me, that's Instagram. That's why I'll go live on there and I'll invite my listeners to go live on there with me. So that's just another way for me to interact with them.
yeah,
And I'll pull them up on the screen. We'll do live Q&A, blah, blah, blah. It's easy for me to create content on there. I understand the language of Instagram. I can just do quick things it takes me seconds, not hours. Like YouTube would take me hours to do the same thing that I do
right.
on Instagram. So that's just something to keep in mind. It's not necessarily video versus audio. It's more of
Channel.
channel and the direct connection to your ideal potential listeners, because we want to scoop up and get new listeners, but I like having a social media channel where you can retain your listeners, because that's the other part. It's like getting customers. You don't want to acquire a new customer and spend so much attention on them that the person you already have gets upset and they go
Yeah.
out the back door at the same time. Same thing with listeners. We got to recruit new, but also maintain the current. And that's why I feel like the effort I'm putting into Instagram, I'm really interacting with my current listeners and giving them a compelling reason to keep listening. Does that make
Yeah, well,
sense?
yeah, it does. I'm learning Instagram and playing with that. I started out with Facebook. I have a private Facebook group
Yep. Yep.
that I keep private because of the sensitivity of some of the discussions that are going on, and
Makes sense.
keeping a positive environment where so many people in the space that I'm dealing with are just negative and miserable and just like, oh, don't give me the dark cloud. It's tough enough. Like, just
Right.
give me a little ray of sunshine, even when the days are dark.
Right.
So that's what I've worked very hard to make sure there's that, culture is probably the wrong term for a group, but there is that style and that personality that comes across as being as kind and caring and uplifting as possible, even when sort of the, what hits the fan.
Oh
So I
yeah.
don't know if you get bleeped or not, so I'm being polite. I'll say when the bleep hits the fan.
When the bleep hits the bleeping
Yeah.
McBleep fan.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Somebody told me that intelligent people curse more often, so
Yeah.
we'll just do bleep, 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 bleep.
Hell yeah.
Mensa
So
bleep.
no, I think, yeah,
And I've
like
tried Twitter, I'm out there, so
yeah,
I'll just put little posts when there's a new show out there. I don't go aggressive in the others.
yeah. Well, I think, I mean, do you feel like Facebook is where most of your people are? I mean, do you feel like that's where the engagement's happening, or do you need to fish in other ponds a little bit?
I probably need to fish in other ponds a little bit. I haven't done anything on Pinterest because it's geared towards more visuals, as I understand.
Yeah.
I've been playing a little bit in Instagram as well and having some fun there. But it's really sort of cut and paste. If there's a post that I do one, I just throw it right over to the others because I
Yeah.
at the moment it's in a creator stage and building this up. It's been a year since the podcast's been out, a year in October, and I'm starting to see a real uptick in
Good.
sharing and visibility, and it's just starting. And another friend said it takes about a year, and then all of a sudden you'll start seeing it just
True.
explode, which is about where I am. It's just in the beginning, the tip of starting to go, "Whoa, how did that happen?"
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I think since we're kind of in the beginning of a year, if I could offer some like focus advice on how to figure
please.
this out,
Yeah.
and you could kind of divide this up, whatever makes sense with you and your business and your time. But I know you have plenty on your plate. Like that's something I would be very sensitive to. It's not like I just don't want to heap a whole bunch on. So I think like some sort of a simple experiment where you go, okay, everything that's kind of automated in motion, I'm going to maintain that.
Mhm.
You've got a Facebook group. Definitely kind of use that as an anchor currently, because that is currently working.
Which is what I'm doing. Yeah.
But yeah, but do maybe one monthly focus point on one social media platform where you go, okay, February, I'm going to dive a little bit deeper on Instagram. I'm going to spend an extra 30 minutes per week on either learning
Hmm.
something about Instagram or a new technique or going live or doing a reel for the first time or just see what kind of engagement did we have? Did something good
Right.
happen? Did I get a little blip in my downloads or something, and just kind of a little extra attention on one and then switch to a different one and go, okay, Instagram experiment done. Here are my notes. Let's go to Twitter or let's go to Pinterest. And I think an equal amount of time on learning and actually trying
Sure.
what you're learning. And that's what I do with my clients when we're kind of just getting their brand up and going. I'm like, all right, we don't know where your people are hanging out, but there'll probably be one, maybe two platforms that when you show up, they're like, oh my God, this is what I needed to hear. And it's noticeably different and
Yeah.
easier.
Yeah.
So I think that would be a good goal to experiment month by month this year. And if you spend, the first half of 2023 doing that on 5 or 6 different platforms, I think you will find the one. And maybe it is Facebook and you're like, all right, I'm
Yeah.
already there. Cool. We're good.
Yeah.
So any feelings on that?
Yeah, no, I hadn't even thought about doing just one, focusing on one and pushing a little bit more. Like I said, I'll do a post and then just share it across the different platforms just to say, okay, it's done. It's just get it off my plate. I'm just like, please, do I
Yeah.
have to do this?
Yeah,
But I like the idea so it doesn't feel so overwhelming because those of us who are
exactly.
entrepreneurs, we tend to, even if we've had corporate lives, we tend to, I say, the octopus is my spirit animal because we need all the arms we can get.
Yes. That was a good visual. Like you mentioned that when you filled out your information for this interview. And I was like, that is a great visual for a lot of entrepreneurs. I
Yeah,
feel like an
and learning
octopus.
how to speak with visuals has been a skill that I've been practicing on, so I
Yeah.
get that, yeah.
Yeah. So I think, I think that's just going to be a nice little focus point. I'm big on just kind of micro homework, micro steps like that. But you'll see, your people will show up and they will speak to you and be like, all right, Nancy, this is where you need to be, girl. And so I think just kind of letting that unfold the rest of this year and taking kind of a low pressure attitude on it. And one thing I'll put out there, because a lot of people are nervous, they're like, how can I only focus on one? Like that makes me sweat at night. Because what if
I
my
can't do
people
that,
on Pinterest, like they want to be everywhere? So what I did at the end of 2022 was the last 3 months, I stopped promoting my show everywhere except for Instagram. That was
Really?
it.
Okay.
And my downloads exploded. Like
Huh,
I crossed for my show, I crossed 20,000 downloads a month for the first time
wow.
in October. And that was basically my second month of only focusing on Instagram. So I was spending more time where I was already getting engagement. And I have to be fearless when I do these experiments because I got to come back to my listeners and go, okay, this worked or this didn't work. And so I got to go all
Yeah.
in, and it really, really works. And I was trying to post on basically everywhere except for Twitter because I couldn't figure out how to make Twitter work. So like Pinterest, LinkedIn, Facebook stories, YouTube, all the places. Now I'm automating YouTube and a little bit on Facebook, but any atom effort, it all 100% goes into Instagram moving forward. And my
Good.
downloads just took off
Wow.
because I was showing up where most of my people were hanging out and having real interactions, real relationships. Like I talked to a guy who just messaged me this morning. He's like, I'm excited to do your new challenge. I've been getting emails from you for a year. And like, I'm like, I'm glad you stuck around. That's great. Or I got an Instagram story reply from a guy last week that's like, I listened to 109 episodes of your show last year. I listened to you for 48 hours combined. I was like, oh my God, that's
Whoa.
crazy. So those are the
Adam's ego
signs. Yeah.
explodes.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Those are the signs that I'm like, okay, I'm in the right place. And I just need to double and triple down my effort here. So those are the signs that I want you to look for. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. I have 2 questions for
Yeah.
you. On automation, one, what is the, easiest automation tool that you've used that you would say would be the place to start for some of that?
Well, I mean, StreamYard, what we're using right now is, I'm doing this interview and we're
Right.
live. You can go live on Facebook, you can go live on LinkedIn, you can go live in your Facebook group, any Facebook group.
Right from StreamYard.
Yep.
Okay, so you don't have to
YouTube.
touch anything. Yeah.
Nope. And all the little bells and whistles that you see, like I can add little things across the bottom that scroll. I can do
Yeah, I
like
used it
all this
early
stuff.
on in when it first came out, and it was having on a different podcast that I had built, it was having some problems, but I guess
Yeah.
it's, that was probably about 2 years ago, so,
Yeah. I've been very,
yeah.
very happy with it. So that's the main tool that I use. I had experimented with other automated posting
Mhm.
platforms, and I was noticing really low engagement when it would automatically post and like no one would see it because the algorithm doesn't really like the automated posting thing, especially on Facebook. It was like really low engagement, kind
Really
of
interesting, okay.
tanked my account. So
Ooh,
yeah, now I just do a lot of copy and paste. So I'll put everything marketing wise into like an Evernote file. I've got my
and just drag and drop.
assets, yeah,
Yeah,
assets, copy, all that, and I'll just copy paste, done in 5 minutes. So
yeah. And get a
that's where
VA
I'm
to
at
do
now.
that if you need to, right? Yeah,
Exactly. Great
yeah.
task to delegate. You're exactly right.
Yeah, the other question is, you said that you had an explosion, like 20,000 downloads now a month on average. Do you think that the engagement in podcasting from listeners has exploded and that's part of the reason? Or is it just that you're so brilliant? You know?
Well, Nancy, um, I mean, I think we can look at that question even outside of my own numbers. The amount of listeners of podcasts is exploding. Like it
It
is.
has increased
Yes.
exponentially in the last
Yes.
couple of months. I was just curious of what's going on. I know more people are getting into podcasting. I wasn't sure what was necessarily happening in the listening audience side as much, if the
Yeah.
growth is happening
And
there.
they're more savvy. Like people know. Like back in the day on Facebook, you would post your new episode and then you knew like the algorithm doesn't like it when you post the link that leads you off Facebook. So
Right.
in the first comment, I would drop the link so people could find my episode. And now it's like all we have to say is find this episode wherever you listen to podcasts and people know what we're
People
talking
find it.
about. They're like,
Yeah,
oh, I've been on Spotify before. Oh, I know what Apple Podcasts is.
right.
And 5 years ago, I mean, for sure, 7.5 years ago when I started, that did not like I had to leave a freaking trail of breadcrumbs for people like, and then you go here, and then next
The
click on
birds
this
ate the
link. And
popcorn along the
yeah,
way.
yeah. So this is a very accessible age where people like they know how to get there. They know how to listen to a show. They have podcasts. They're enjoying audio. So I think that has a lot to do with it. And then it's just making sure that we're in front of the right people and we're hanging out
Yeah,
where they hang out
yeah.
and just keep showing up consistently. And then they show up consistently for you. So
No, I appreciate that, and
yeah,
I didn't wanna, like, slam you, and so don't take it personally. I was just
no,
I just
no,
curious
no.
because, like I said, I know the numbers of podcasts that are hitting the market, but it's an average that, most of them don't make it past 6 shows, and I'm on
Right.
51 on this one, so,
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah. I think
publishing weekly.
with that vein of podcast listeners being smarter, like I think at least I'm like this as a podcast listener and consumer. If I see a show that's got hundreds of episodes and they are like week after week after week, I'm like, okay, this person,
So
I don't
serious.
I don't want to get invested in a show that's gonna get all spotty on me all of a second. And it's like, oh, now they're not doing episodes. It's like when your favorite Netflix series gets canceled after like the third season. There's supposed to be 12 seasons. Like, oh my God, now I'll never figure out
Where
what
they do
happened
the
with that.
mid-season episode of, like,
Yeah,
was it
yeah.
Yellowstone after 3 episodes?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like,
So
"No!"
yeah, it's irritating. So like we don't want to be that as podcasters. So I think more
Yeah.
people are savvy to that and they go, okay, this person is showing up. They've got a lot of content. So I think that's another important reason why I love weekly episodes. That's a
Yeah,
major strategy.
I'm doing weekly now. I was doing twice a month, and I went to weekly, and
Good move.
to make it a little easier for myself, I started out this summer testing what I call summer shorts, little play on words, and instead of doing the longer episodes and interviews, I just did anywhere between 7 to 10, 15-minute shows, monologues, and learning to do the monologue, I have to say, by myself is not easy. It's getting easier.
Yeah.
So, what I'll do is a long show, and now in the wintertime, I'll do long show, short show, long show, short show. So I
Nice.
mix them up a little bit, and it seems to be helpful.
Yeah.
I'm surprised at the interest in the short shows. I
Heck
thought it was
yeah.
the longer ones that'd be interesting. And they're
Solo
long words are good
episodes are
too. Yeah.
awesome. Like people love solo jam sessions with their favorite podcast hosts. So
Yeah.
I'm definitely glad you're doing that.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we've covered a ton of stuff here. I feel really
Thank you.
good
This
about
has been
this.
great. I appreciate
I
it.
want to make sure you get to shout out your show now. So let people know if they want to find you
Yeah.
on social media or your website. Go ahead and shout it out.
So my show is Doing It Best with Eldercare Success or just Eldercare Success, eldercaresuccess.live. It's on all the major platforms, listening platforms. So if you want to find that there. On Instagram, it's listed, I'm under Caremanity or Caremanity 10, because why not get a perfect 10? and and in Twitter, it's Caremanity as well. So
Outstanding, Nancy. I
yeah.
appreciate you joining me here today. And for everybody that wants to be just like my pod pal, Nancy, if you want to come on the show for a podcast audit session, come and grab a seat. Head on over to the website, podcastingbusiness.school. Get signed up, and I'll welcome you to that guest chair, just like my pod pal, Nancy. All right, everybody. I appreciate you tuning in. Appreciate you being into this show, and I'll be excited to meet you when you sign up for your very own podcast audit session. With that, I'll send you out into the podcasting wilderness, wishing you health, happiness, and many downloads. We will see you next time.
Thank you so much.